But just having, as we say, a great neighbor down the hall means everything. And there's been a ton of academic research into this over the decades that home sharing has been around. And specifically nonprofit supported home sharing programs have been around. We found self-reported improvements in mood, in memory, in general cognition, in attitude. It's kind of shocking, actually, how much, just like we've always been hearing for so long now, that loneliness is about as bad for your health as a pack of cigarettes. Well, this is quitting smoking then, right? Quitting a pack a day habit. So it's really tremendous.
Hey y'all, it's Kosta. Today I'm here with my guest, Justin Ellerby, president of the National Shared Housing Resource Center and co-founder and executive director at HomeShare American River. This goes without saying, but housing is one of the greatest challenges facing Americans of all ages in all parts of the United States. How does home sharing address this challenge for seniors in an economical and a practical way?
Great question, Kosta, and thank you so much for having me on the show here. I guess sort of zooming back a little bit, it makes a lot of sense to just think about a little bit of the historical context that brought us to the place where we are in a housing crisis, especially as it affects older Americans. So, post-Civil War, we had a very traumatic experience as a country that we decided to get over in part by making a deal that we were going to heal our national spirit, but also individual families and individuals to say, go out west and you're going to get you a home out there. And historians of the post-Civil War have said that they really find this emphasis on the home and households was so critical. Of course, it goes along with the railroad and all kinds of explosions of technology. So this is something that lives really deep in the American heart and in the American psyche, is the idea that you can be a success and you can be a fully grown adult if you live in your own box that is all yours. And the only people allowed in there are folks that are blood related to you. Well, then we did another sort of double down on that in the Great Depression and correctly saw that, hey, having bands of roving young homeless men is not good for society. And it never is. A lot of terrible things that happen in history with roving bands of young men. So we decided to double down on that and create a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which does not exist in any of our peer countries. Actually, no other country on earth has this. So again, doubling down on you're going to be in your own box. And if you have your own box, you're going to be good to go. Well, a lot has happened since then. We've had just all kinds of economic mobility, geographic mobility, change, more individualistic cultures that has families not living multi-generationally as they used to. And at the same time, we have not been building enough housing, I would argue, for a very, very long time in this country, protecting the interests of incumbent homeowners. Well, because again, this is your retirement account. This is your sense of place. Everything is built into this box. And that has shut out a lot of folks from being able to afford new boxes. And you end up with this just awful lose-lose situation where you've got some folks that are overhoused, meaning they're living in 3, 4, 5-bedroom homes just themselves. The kids are spread out all over the country, and these rooms are just sitting empty there. But people really do feel like failures sometimes. They feel less than if they are living with someone that they're not blood related to. So you need some piece of cultural software, if you will, that you can add into the situation and that then makes it okay. But also, as our tagline for HomeShare American River says, safe, fair, valuable, and durable to share a home. And you can't really do that very well as a for-profit entity. The incentives just don't line up to spending all of the time required with to really make those that proposition come true. It doesn't pencil out as a for-profit very well. And so nonprofit home share programs have been around for 50 years in this country. Yep, the National Shared Housing Resource Center, was founded by Maggie Kuhn, who also founded the Gray Panthers, an incredible elder rights activist in her own regard. And then the two oldest programs are HomeShare Vermont on the East Coast. And then on the West Coast in San Mateo County in the Bay Area, we've got HIP Housing. And they're both giants and flagship leaders. And they both have done incredible work with the National Shared Housing Resource Center to start programs like mine, which is only 2.5 years old, emerge and blossom and really benefit from a massive international, in fact, community of practice.
So we tend to think about senior housing from a purely necessity-based standpoint, whether it's accessibility, safety, or care-based needs. But there's a much more nuanced and human element of housing that is often overlooked. How can the community and livelihood of seniors improve through shared housing?
In so many ways. So referring back to that, piece of context there, if you don't have kids and grandkids, living nearby you, and your age peers are deceased, or they are just not as numerous anymore, or they might not be as active, then actually what happens inside the walls of your own home, whether you own or rent it, we actually don't make a distinction with our program. Of our hosts, as we say, the people that have the rooms to rent out are half owners, half renters. A bunch of them are in mobile home parks. So they're actually both ground renters and homeowners. Sure. But the person that lives in your home with you that's already there, even if they're not a best friend, and it's not something people should aim for, but just having, as we say, a great neighbor down the hall means everything. And there's been a ton of academic research into this over the decades that home sharing has been around, and specifically nonprofit supported home sharing programs have been around. We found self-reported improvements in mood, in memory, in general cognition, in attitude. It's kind of shocking, actually, how much, just like we've always been hearing for so long now, that loneliness is about as bad for your health as a pack of cigarettes. Well, yep. This is quitting smoking then, right?
Yeah,
quitting exactly. A pack a day habit. So it's really tremendous.
So it sounds kind of like adult foster care, which is, and I say that because it's a program that we have in Tennessee, which is where I'm from. And it works, but the program that we have in Tennessee is actually a for-profit program that the state administers. But it literally falls in line with everything that you're saying with regards to there's not enough housing, and more importantly, there's not enough affordable housing, because while we do believe that all 70 million baby boomers are living in their own home, there's a lot of them that haven't, that either through no fault of their own, whether it's some type of financial event like divorce for that matter, or someone passing away and they're no longer able to afford their mortgage, they have to sell their home and then they have to find a place to live. And even with the money that they get from selling their home, it's still difficult for them to be able to make ends meet. And so some people get to a certain age where they can't safely reside in their own home without support. And so this is a great program, I think, to be able to meet those expectations. Let's dig down. I want to talk about your program, HomeShare American River. How did it start? How does it work? And who can participate?
Great. So we started really, as I was referring to back a minute ago here, with a lot of help from the nationwide, in fact, international community of practice. It's really extraordinary what the National Shared Housing Resource Center stepped up to do in terms of holding events on the East Coast and the West Coast, and having a very comprehensive guidebook with some very conservative, practical, bubble popping kind of advice and guidelines, and being just available. So I'm so grateful that the organization was really there to help us out, because these programs are a little bit weird, actually, in terms of where they sit, in terms of other approaches to housing, other approaches to in-home care. They're just a little bit of a weird animal. And so that was extraordinary. How we formed, and by the way, HomeShare American River is based in the greater Sacramento area. So we serve any home that is within a 1-hour drive of Roseville, and that catches a service area of 2.4 million people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's an awful lot of folks to help. And we've just been growing and growing in the last 2.5 years since we started. We started as actually under the fiscal sponsorship, so meaning under the wing, legally speaking, the bank accounts and tax ID, all that, of the Placer People of Faith Together, which is an interfaith advocacy organization in our region that does tremendous work on all kinds of issues, climate change, immigrant support, but also affordable housing. And they saw this as a really great way to bust in and achieve something potentially at a very great scale. Because unlike trying to build anything out here in California, especially, we're not blessed with Tennessee's, I would say, more sensible zoning strictures.
Yes. Right.
It is impossible to build anything. It's actually harder to build something if it's going to be affordable for numerous reasons than a market rate. So they saw a great opportunity to help build houses, build new housing without sinking a single nail, without getting a single permit, obtaining a single loan. And they thought it was a really great thing. They were working on it for a bit. And then an AmeriCorps volunteer who was working with local county government put myself who was already working on the same project with someone else within the Interfaith Association that was on it. And then I should certainly add that as of October 30th, our program was doing so well that our funder, the Area 4 Agency on Aging, was so just pleased with how we've been doing in the first 2.5 years that they absorbed us. And so actually I need to, it's so recent I haven't changed my title or anything, but I'm now a program manager with the Area 4 Agency on Aging, and HomeShare American River is a sub-brand of that AAA. Which it works across 7 counties, so it's a really great fit that we're looking
when we're talking about HomeShare, is it only for people over the age of 65, or are you providing housing for people across the board?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. Under the terms of our so-called, you could say, pilot program funding,
sure.
Which runs until the end of July, we've actually been serving folks with no distinction to age at all. That's because great. Area 4 realizes that this is kind of like HomeShare programs are kind of like platform businesses, like a Facebook. You can't imagine Facebook becoming successful if it was still only serving college students, that narrow demographic. Similarly, they understood, I've talked up a good game, I think, to say that this is really a program that serves so many different people. And indeed, as I'm coming on here, even though come July, we'll be only serving one participant in the match, either the host or the guest, will need to be in the age of 60 or older. Uh-huh. But even still, this is a program that really works best when it knits together different kinds of communities of interest and communities of practice. So veterans, students, workforce housing, it all kind of all these flavors just go really, really well together with seniors and senior housing as well.
So let's talk about the distinction between roommates and HomeShare. For most people, they're hearing the term HomeShare and it sounds like roommates. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a roommate and HomeShare?
Right. I think one way to think about, on one level, there's very little difference. In fact, sometimes I think I should have called the program Housemate Helper, reference to Hamburger Helper. Maybe it'd be a little bit dated, but maybe actually that would be good for. But it really is that in some ways. But then again, there's a world of difference when you have a third party sort of involved. And the way I kind of think about it is, imagine going to a concert and you're having a good time and it's really, really packed and there's, pyrotechnics maybe up front and you're great. And then you notice that there's no exit doors. And then you look around and there's no fire alarms anywhere. Now, nothing has changed materially, but just knowing that you are all on your own, if something bad should happen, you're all on your own. All of a sudden, it's a very different experience for a lot of folks, right? And so we're almost, in one sense, we are just the fire alarm that hangs on the door that you just know. Just the fact that you know that there's something to pull, that you know that there's, in our case, someone to call when you're 2 weeks, 6 months, 2 years into your match, just knowing that it's there changes the entire flavor of the relationship. Because let's be honest, housemates where one person is the primary resident and the other is the secondary, to them, which is what we're talking about.
Right.
It smells like landlord-tenant, but it's not actually. In fact, it's not even legally speaking landlord-tenant in some crucial ways. It's not friends. Friends can develop, but if you get those roles confused and mixed up, as in my experience as a live-in landlord to 4 folks, I guarantee you, when those roles don't mesh right, they're not aligned to the expectations, it gets very, very bad. It's not family, even though family, those family feelings and experiences and expectations are really, really powerfully brought to the surface when you're sharing a kitchen and sharing a roof. It's not any of those things. And so what we serve to do is to disambiguate, tease apart the ways that this particular housemate role is like, but is also different than all those other roles. And then that allows it to successfully be the parts of a landlord-tenant relationship that it is. It allows it to successfully have space for friendship, but mostly it's great neighbors down the hall.
Yeah. Is that, I want to expand on that. So the best way to describe it, it is considered landlord-tenant. So does the individual receive, and I don't know how far into the details you want to go, but I'm just curious, like, does the individual who is the landlord, does he receive just a portion of the rent, or does he have to provide any kind of services for these individuals over the age of 60 or 65?
Great question. We work with everyone that we possibly can, wherever they are at. It's a huge blessing of Area 4, the latitude that they've granted us, the sort of designs. And frankly, Kosta, we're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks in some respects.
You kind of have to nowadays, you know?
And every housing market is different too, right?
Right.
So we see some cases, some matches that we've made of the, I don't know, say about 4 out of the 28 matches that we've made have involved some kind of service exchange. And there, it's really kept happy from the perspective of labor law that it is a room rental contract with then an add on there of, hey, we're going to take some money off of the next month's rent in exchange for services done, in a pretty well-defined way. Right. And so that keeps it, happy for everyone. And again, on the safe side of labor law as well.
Of course.
But there's cases where, the host may be an older adult. There's cases where they are younger than the person that they're actually housing. There's a host I was working with that had bought a very, very large house, much larger than he actually ended up really probably wanting to deal with 5 bedrooms in a beautiful part of town here. And I have placed, he found one senior housemate himself, and he was okay. He worked out quite well, but he really wanted some help with the next 3, and we were able to help him with those too. So
that's fascinating. He's got 4 roommates.
Yep, and as do I. For and my wife, the only way that we could afford a house in California was to buy a shuttered room and board facility. It was shabby, it needed a lot of work, but it was actually the same price as the starter homes that were available around there. Right? And so now, when our father-in-law moved in with us, we had a room for him.
Yeah.
Because he moved, into our region from elsewhere. We asked, someone was moving out anyway. And so it was moved in. We now have a delightful 1-year-old daughter. And when she needs a nursery, we'll ask someone else to move out. It's been great having you for 3 years at that point, right?
Sure.
At very, very low rents. And it helps us with our mortgage. It gives us flexibility through our own life course. And so I'm pushing this really to, millennials like myself, or, otherwise shut out of the housing market. It's for seniors. It's really for everyone.
That's amazing.
In that sense.
As someone that formerly worked for the California Department of Food and Agriculture on a federal and on a state level, what do you think are the policies and red tape that are holding us back from making real impactful change in senior housing across the United States?
That's a great question. I should add, I was working for CDFA. I was actually involved in overseeing groups like the California Raisin Marketing Board that made the dancing raisins in the 80s and things like that. USDA at the federal level does do actually a fair more housing than people realize. USDA, CDFA, not so much. But so this is now just like me getting on a soapbox kind of and gleaning what I've learned from housing Twitter and other folks. At a federal level, most affordable housing is, to my understanding, and that's just bracket that onto everything I say for the next 3 minutes,
Sure.
Is that the program is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, LIHTC, as it's referred to, is how the feds subsidize affordable housing of all sorts, and especially large multifamily developments. From what I understand, the book for that is about this thick. You need to be a very special combination of lawyer, accountant, and developer to even understand what's in the book.
Yep.
Again, it's one of these sad things where it's actually, in some ways, much cheaper to develop market rate housing than it is affordable housing, which is just totally backwards from how it should be, right?
In Nashville, they had to, and I hate to interrupt, I just want to point something out. In Nashville and in other municipalities across Tennessee, it's so complicated that MDHA, which is Metro Development Housing Authority in Nashville, literally had to be the one that said, okay, we will tackle this because it's so necessary and it's so needed. And they have all of those components that you described just to be able to create work-based housing, affordable housing, and market-based housing in one unit. Because if not, then everybody would just buy the land, gentrify it, and put up market rate housing.
That's right. That's right. It's really unfortunate. Here in California, we've been super blessed. Last month, Governor Newsom signed into laws quite a few. I think it was like 30 some odd different housing laws to really push housing production and support across the state, including making it even easier to build granny flats, as they're called, accessory dwelling units in your backyard, or subdivide your home. It's been really, really tremendous there. But that's to make up for many decades of too much red tape. And let's be fair here and just call it as it is. The red tape in a lot of our communities is actually not federal government. It's at the local municipal level. If I had any call to action to leave your listeners with, I'd say when you see notice that someone is proposing to build senior housing, or frankly, any kind of remotely affordable housing in your neighborhood, show up to that meeting and you'll have a huge impact, because there's definitely going to be people there saying, no matter how it's designed, there's going to be some people saying, this housing is going to make increase traffic. It's going to have all these negative impacts on local infrastructure. And there's rarely anyone saying, no, I live in this neighborhood. I vote from this district, and I want to see affordable housing so that my kids don't have to move out of the region, out of state, in order to live with me, so that my in-home care workers don't have to commute an hour and a half, right? Yeah. That's a huge thing that can happen. And that's where I would sort of put the federal and local.
And I would say that's not just a California issue. I'd say it's a United States issue, because those types of conversations are happening even within our community of Tennessee, Cookeville, Tennessee, for that matter, which is only a population of about 100,000 people. So there are constantly, especially people that are opposed to high density housing developments, because they need the affordable housing component. Because when I say, like, you and I are both millennials, when we talk about affordable housing, starter homes, back in like when I bought my first house in 2011, it cost $186,000. That's a true starter home right there. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, a starter home is, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd love to hear how much it is in California, at least $550,000.
Wow.
Is the price of a starter home in Tennessee?
I'm so busy running this program, I don't actually look at local sale prices. We've got a very strange market here in the Sacramento region, probably because it's so proximate to the Bay Area.
Sure.
And then the rise of remote work changed a lot of it. I'm sure Nashville was impacted. Some was Bay Area folks moved all the way to Nashville and Raleigh and other highly desirable, highly progressive land use wise jurisdictions. But I can say that when I and my wife bought our house 6 years ago, we managed. Oh, don't mind saying, we bought this one for $300K, and the starter
Nice.
home that we found in the exact same neighborhood, a little bit of a rough neighborhood to be frank, not so desirable, was 270,
Okay.
and that was for something like a quarter of the square footage, right?
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
really nuts. We all know about the value of going to Costco for groceries, right? If
Sure.
your household is big enough. So buying a home like that's larger than you yourself need, but you can divvy up, so to speak, in a regular and reliable way, is something that it just makes this whole home ownership more affordable and more practical.
One more question about HomeShare with regards to red tape. How do you get around the zoning restrictions for multifamily when homes are zoned for single family? Or is it because you're a nonprofit component that the Fair Housing Act protects you from that type of dynamic?
Well, unfortunately, it does not protect us from that dynamic at all. But thankfully, the zoning requirements don't bite on the properties that we do work with. And I'll just be clear. I would never put a host or guest in a situation where the guest wasn't supposed to be there and where either party had something to sort of hang over the head.
Right.
In case, because honestly, as careful as you are in arranging a home share, selecting, screening, the matchmaking, aligning expectations, putting all those expectations into a living together agreement that then is appended to the rental contract, so it's actually enforceable as a condition of the tenancy and of the rental, where the room temperature is,
Sure,
what kind of noxious kitchen cooking smells are allowed or not allowed, all that stuff, all those details. Even with all that incredible care that I and all of my nonprofit home sharing program siblings put into it, things can still go sideways. And again, knowing what will happen if you need to make an exit or if you wanted to make an exit is so key to all kinds of informations. So we don't get involved in anything illegal like that. And where we find a lot of trouble with not zoning, municipal zoning, but with CC&Rs and such, is in mobile home parks, in HOAs.
Yeah,
right.
HOAs are tough,
that are very, very weighted against poor people, right? People poorer than the folks that can afford homes to buy the homes.
Right. Exactly.
So they often have very, very strict prohibitions against renting a room in that home to someone, even though they paid for it, they own it. But the value of that home is partly tied up in the fact that no lower income people will be allowed in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Aside from the obvious financial reasons someone might want to start home sharing, what are the greater micro and macro benefits of hosting and being a guest in someone's home?
It's really tremendous. My passion for shared housing actually came in my sophomore year of college when I moved off of campus and into a nonprofit student housing co-op. And I was just shocked. We were 28 people, including folks that frankly were living in their cars and just sharing meals and chores with folks in the community. Mm-hmm. We achieved rents that were just shockingly affordable, but it was sort of like come for the household economics, come for the money, but then you stay for the incredible things that happen when people are meeting their economic needs together. Humans are kind of funny this way, right? It's like the best way to fly is to aim at the ground and miss. Or another way you can think of it, if you're on a date and you're just focused the whole time on, okay, how are we going to co-sign a mortgage for the house? Like, how soon do we get married? What are our kids going to look like? It doesn't work. You have to be on the date to be present and in the moment and be having a social need met at that moment. And then beautiful things can come out of it, or maybe they don't, and you're prepared for that to happen. Similarly, for me in that co-op and all the other nonprofit housing co-ops I subsequently lived in and presided over and helped to develop, and also for our host and guest clients, it's those little moments when you're making toast and you cross paths in the kitchen and you're not trying and stretching, grasping for a relationship there. But when it organically develops, you get amazing friendships that, for me, have lasted my entire adult life. You get benefits of when, for instance, someone in my family lives in an unofficial, unsupported home share where she got very, very lucky. Her host is an amazing woman. Well, her host had an injury, pretty serious, and a senior host at that. Well, because she had a housemate that she had a wonderful relationship with, she didn't have to hire in-home care somehow, right? Paid for all that just for minor, relatively minor, but critical tasks that she could not do for herself around her own home. She was able to work that out with my family member there. So that's just another example of serendipity, wonderful random things that can just blossom and bloom. And again, there's all that stuff that I was mentioned before that the prior academic research has uncovered about mood, cognition, appetite, all that. At the macro scale, this is something that people don't talk enough about in our sector, but I think is really important, is that this is actually one of the most underrated ways to fight climate change that you can possibly imagine. So people, what does this have to do with climate change? Well, we can recycle. We can choose to take air travel more or less. The truth is, most of our climate impact, our carbon impact, is based on decisions that were made for us a long time ago when streets were paved, sewers were installed, all that kind of stuff. And then the proximity that our homes have to jobs. So when you double the use of a home, you're actually doubling the embedded carbon, the carbon that's already been used to build that home. You're doubling its, stretching it twice as far. So that is a huge macro benefit. There's many others too, but that's one that I would choose to highlight.
So as we're talking about the micro and the macro benefits, we talked about the financial benefits. So on a larger scale, do you believe shared housing could help solve the senior housing and care crisis? Is there a way that we can bring together willing, qualified hosts to house and care for seniors, giving them an option between aging at home alone and going into a facility-based care?
I think it is such a powerful opportunity. It gets me up out of bed every morning. Really just seeing it's not all the time in life where you have two needs that actually solve each other. Most of life is about a lot of really difficult trade-offs and limited resources. But here on one side, we've got a severe lack of affordable rental housing. We also have a lack of employment, informal employment opportunities, employment that folks can do who maybe are priced out of college degrees, never got college degrees for one reason or another, and could really use some informal employment in a way that they excel at, using skills of household help, domestic chores, being a great companion, being conversational. Right. That's Absolutely. Something that's hard to get paid for. That last one in particular. But in a home share situation, that need can solve the need for the in-home care, which is, of course, not just a need for in-home care. Like you were saying, this is the need to stay in your home and age in place without going into the financially ruinous position of, a lot of longer-term care facilities, right? Right. And just having to pay down all of your assets and cash until you're finally poor enough to qualify for Medicare, and then it's a whole other level of problem as a country of how we're going to have Medicare for you.
And we talk about that literally almost on every single episode. I mean, it's such a significant and serious issue, and it's a problem across the United States. Every single state has this issue, whether it's Medi-Cal, whether it's TennCare, doesn't matter. It's significant, and it affects 100 million Americans in some way or another. So, I mean, that's pretty significant, 1/3 of our population. I will say, and before we wrap up, I just want to ask this as a more of a technical question than anything else. In Tennessee, we have a program called Family Model. which is very similar to a shared housing program, but the state subsidizes the family by providing them a stipend, a daily stipend for care. Now, you can do that directly to the family. They call it companion care.
Right.
Or you can do it through a provider agency. A provider agency takes a cut and the family gets paid. And they can have up to 3 individuals living in a home. Mm-hmm. Does California have something like that?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of, I'll say there's quite a lot of diversity within the National Shared Housing Resource Center family of nonprofit home share programs. And specifically with respect to whether rental assistance of any sort or subsidies of any sort are involved in the matches. For us, of the 28 matches we've made, only one of them has involved any kind of rental assistance subsidy.
Okay.
Although in that case, that's about the highest rent that we've ever achieved. So great. A formerly unhoused woman is now living in a beautiful hilltop home with private bathroom and everything because she had the wherewithal to work the system and get that rental assistance.
Yeah, right.
So that's wonderful. There is so folks should definitely go to nationalsharedhousing.org, and they should certainly go to the program directory page and see if there's one of our member programs is available in your area. That would be one of my very important call to action besides showing up to those meetings, community meetings to approve new housing. But there is another side to the home share world, loosely, I would say, associated under the Shared Housing Institute. And my understanding is that side of things is only working with rental subsidies, basically.
Okay.
Whether that is formerly known as Section 8, now Housing Choice Voucher, whether that's HUD-VASH subsidies for veterans, et cetera, et cetera. So there are quite a few of those programs that are operating in California. It's just a different sort of situation when you are providing the cultural software, I'd say, to make housemates happy when this may be the only housing option that they have. Again, it's when the exit door is, marked a little bit differently. It changes the whole flavor of the entire relationship and the kinds of support it needs.
And you're doing this altruistically, and I think that that's a component that we should really emphasize. There's a lot of people that build affordable housing. Let me start over. There's a lot of people that build housing, whether it's affordable or not, that's up for debate, to make money. And, and this is not something that, anybody's going to retire on. This is literally for the good of the community, for the good of the state, for the good of society. You're pairing people together to give them an opportunity to learn from one another. And I think the most important thing that you're doing is you're fulfilling that multi-generational need that we have right now as a society. We're trying, we can't just live individualistically and not care about, anybody else but ourselves and our immediate family, literally within proximity of each other. When I say immediate, this aging crisis, that we have in terms of how many people are aging, we're only going to be able to solve that by everybody stepping up and saying, I'm going to help. There's a lot of families that are spread out throughout the entire country, even throughout the entire world. And we need to have innovative and unique approaches to solving this aging crisis, service provision crisis, by having programs such as yourselves. So on the note for a call to action, you brought it up a few times. We always like to end the show with a call to action. What's something we can all do today, whether it's through advocacy or local action, to help improve the housing options and accessibility for our elder community?
If it's all right, I'm going to just stick with the first two that I came up with and jump the gun on you. Number one, when you see that someone's trying to build affordable housing, or frankly almost any kind of housing in your neighborhood, if you need to be convinced that it's for the best, do a little bit of digging, do a little due diligence. But I'm going to just say almost all the time, We need more housing, not less. And show up to those meetings. Be the person that says, no, I want higher traffic. Right. I want to live with a broader range of income of folks, because those are the people that are going to be, mowing my lawn, that are going to be providing my in-home care, that are my own family, that are the next generation coming up. Right. And that are the seniors who never managed, who got shut for whatever reason, never became homeowners. They need places to live too. I want to keep my neighbors neighbors. I want to keep locals local. Just show up and be a voice for that. And that's already just going to be hugely, hugely helpful relative to where it stands now. But then the other thing is for folks that are interested in either starting a program or participating in a program, you can certainly go to Shared Housing Institute, their website, and see what programs might locally be served in your area. But of course, I'm biased, and I would say you should definitely go to nationalsharedhousing.org. Go to the program directory there and see the local programs that are serving you. If you don't see one and think maybe someone should do that, just like I did, 6 years ago, someone should really start that. Then give us a call and drop us an email or through the contact form page, because there's nothing that we as a board and that I myself love better than helping to bring folks together to help bring this model to more and more folks. It's somehow it is innovative because it's the first time, in the sense that it's the first time that many people have heard it when I tell them about it, but also this is pretty old, 50 years. It's time tested. We know it works. It's spread from America to all over the globe. There's HomeShare International as an organization. So it's innovative to the first person that hears it, but it's time tested in the best way. So let's just keep using the tools that we have and the housing that we already have. Later on, it's the most sustainable housing that you can possibly build. It's not platinum LEED certified with solar panels on top. It's the housing we already have.